Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately titled IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. And as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats, and we have over 200 of them now that are free to you. And these Porch Play Chats are conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm the president of IPA USA. And with me on the porch today is Ross Thompson. Hi, Ross.
Hi, Deb.
Ross is a longtime advocate for play and a Dungeons and Dragons player. I still have to introduce you to my stepson, and the co-host of the podcast, Teaching with the Body and Mind, and the program and educational director to help create play-based and nature-based early learning centers in the South Metro area of Minnesota. Ross, I'm so excited to have you again, and I'm really excited about your topic, the interconnectedness of the developmental domain, social, emotional, cognitive, creative, and physical, and how play or big body play supports all these domains. What a fabulous topic.
I mean, it's a mouthful, but it's a big one.
It's a big one. So I think people sometimes go, oh, big body play. Oh, that
Yep.
rough and tumble, somebody's going to get hurt. So I think it's important for us to really understand that interrelatedness and
Hmm.
interdependence between the domains of development so that
Yeah,
people feel more comfortable with it. What do you think?
I think so. Right? I mean, for those in the world of early childhood, hearing the social learning, emotional learning, cognitive learning, creative learning, and physical learning, they're not topics or areas that we were unfamiliar with, but I think it's very easy to compartmentalize them and think, okay, we do name songs and we do name games and we have our picture page and we have things around the room that help support social development and building friendships. We have our puzzles, we have our matching sets, we have our manipulatives that you can sort by color, shape, and by size. Well, that supports our cognitive. And
Mhm,
we can easily break up our
mhm.
thinking to support each of these areas, but none of these happen in a vacuum, and we know how important the interaction between the children and the children with each other, as well as the children with the caregivers, with their family, how important those interactions are. Well, the same is true for these interactions between the developmental domains,
Mhm.
because um, often I've talked here on a few times of different kind of big body related conversations. And if we're looking at play and specifically kind of the big body or that rough and tumble, and we can use still one of the spiciest topics of wrestling.
Mhm.
Of course, it's going to support physical development because you're using your muscles and you're pushing really hard, and there's a lot that's happening with your physical body. One, getting stronger, but also learning how to kind of be in control of it when I'm getting excited, when I'm feeling overexcited, when I'm feeling upset because somebody pushed me. Well, now we can already see the emotional sides kind of sneaking in.
Mhm.
Oh, well, I want to keep wrestling. I want to keep playing this fun game. Oh, but every time I knock this person over too hard, they don't want to play anymore.
Mm.
And now I ask them to play and they don't want to play even if I want to go build in the block area. Oh, now my social skills are kind of becoming pulled into this area. And I think just the recognition of that, again, the interconnectedness, or I think as you put it, the interdependence of
Mhm.
these domains with one another. And it's not to say that we don't keep track of these things in other areas, but I think it's very easy to go back to that compartmentalization, right?
And I think that comes from our own experience, right?
Right.
Because pull out your math workbooks and then pull out your
Hmm.
reading. And then now you're going to go to a special that's science. And
Yeah.
now you're going to go to phys ed. So that's your physical. And
Yep.
so our whole experience in school was siloed by each one of those areas.
Yeah.
And when you talk about rough and tumble play, and I think about the social and emotional and the physical aspect of it, then I think about, ooh, but look at that executive function
Right.
And their cognitive skills when they're having to sort of reflect on
Mm-hmm.
why their friends may not be wanting to wrestle with them anymore, or they have to start self regulating so that they can control their bodies. And then think of all the language. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, all the
It's
language that they're using.
and applicable and real time and important language. Excuse me. That in this some one of the conversations we've had with some other professionals about like just the introduction of consent at this very early age, especially for young boys,
Mhm.
in this patriarchal world. We'll leave it there. We won't dive into the topic too much there, but I mean, it's one to, I think, keep in mind because when we're wrestling, yep, when someone says stop, it stops right then.
Mhm.
And the way that I do wrestling with my children in my classroom, you know, everybody is welcome to come over and be a part of it. And I kind of go person to person each time, you know, do you want to wrestle? Okay, who do you want to wrestle? And I let them kind of ask each other
Mhm.
because, yeah, maybe these two are really comfortable and want to wrestle each other. And these two over here are really comfortable and wrestle each other. But the one from this group doesn't really want to wrestle the one from this group. So then that idea of rather than kind of forcing the pairs or saying,
Yeah.
well, you're sitting next to each other, so it's you two together, everybody has the chance to ask and everybody has the chance to respond. And that both of those, the invitation and the response are equally important
Mhm.
for for this, this game to happen.
Well, and the other thing that I think is so important for kids to help with their executive function and that self-regulation is to be able to pick up on people's nonverbal cues.
Right.
Maybe they do something that
Yeah.
makes the person say, "Are you okay? Do you still want to go?" You know what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because those nonverbal cues can be based on the child's temperament and their comfort level. That may be the only way that they feel like they can express themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I love this big body play and this rough and tumble because there's so many aspects of development that can take place in, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes at a time when they're wrestling.
Yeah.
Do they go longer than that sometimes?
It's there's been years where we wrestle very, very little because the group just isn't interested. And
Hmm.
then there's years that have had it every day for, yeah, 15, 20, sometimes 30 minutes of just taking turns
Hmm.
because this group that, I mean, as we listened to their responses in other areas, they weren't saying, yeah, I wasn't saying, no, we need 5 more minutes of wrestling time before we're going to get ready to go to snack. It was their continuing to ask. And well, if you have
Okay.
that group that can't sit still, maybe, yeah, and if you don't have a spot to run outside, how can you make a running track inside your classroom where they can have the chance to get that kinesthetic information and response to then get them ready to do some of these other things? Because as we know, again, that interconnectedness and going back to that executive function, if I don't have the chance to get this energy and information that I'm craving, that I'm needing, in terms of, again, we'll keep it in the kinesthetic world and getting this physical information, you asking me then to sit for a 30-minute large group is not going to happen.
How can it happen? I
And
mean,
30-minute large groups is its own conversation anyways, but I mean, just that idea too of,
yeah.
um, if we want them to be successful, we've got to be able to see them and recognize them. And how good does that feel when the adult, the teacher, the parent sees you, the child, for who you are, rather than cork it. You need to, this isn't your time right now. We need you to do something else.
Well, and I think the other big piece is if we, I've been at a conference Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and what has been so fascinating to me is adults can't sit still for 15 or 20 minutes.
Right.
They're getting up and they're not leaving. They're being respectful, but and even if they did leave, it's their choice, right? But
Right.
they're getting up and moving around the room or walking around the room if the presenter doesn't have them up and moving already. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we do this for adult learners. Why do we think it's different for even younger children? This is
Right.
every adult learner, you have to take all these courses if you're going to teach adults, right? Oh, what is an adult learning? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm
Right.
like, it's the same thing as you do with children.
It's
Their bodies still need to move.
Right.
It's it, it's just fascinating to me how we silo ages too,
Yeah.
right? So adults need it.
I think the point that you brought up a few minutes ago, Deb, about like well, we've done our math books and then we go to science time and then we go to, phys ed and that's our, we've compartmentalized our education because that's how we did it 100 years ago. And I mean, there's some things that are great from hundreds of years ago. I mean, there's great architecture, there's great music, there's great, art. But technology still isn't 100 years ago.
Yeah.
The automotive industry, the medical industry, there's continued advancement, but we've still stayed in this idea of you need to sit down, you need to be quiet, you need to
Mhm.
not move, and
Mhm.
I'm going to give you all this information. And
Yeah,
then, and
yeah, we're not going to open their heads and pour it in. They have to experience it and
yeah,
enjoy it. Oh my goodness,
yeah.
please let them enjoy it.
I mean, again, there's more of that interconnectedness of the domains because if you're not interested, your buy-in or your retention is going to be little. And that's the same as for adults. I mean, sometimes I'd ask at different presentations that I've done, um, asking, talking about play and like, what are some of the favorite things you play in the classroom with your children? Oh, this game, this game, this game, this game. When's the last time you, as the adult, have played? And you can see this look go over many faces of like, what
Oh,
do you mean? And then they
right.
think like, well, what is play? And I said, exactly. What's the play for you? Is it sports? Is it activities? Is it puzzles? Is it cross stitch? Is it cooking? Is it dance? Is it short story writing? Those are still playful if it feels playful inside of you,
Mhm.
as children find their ways of playing. But if you're interested in the topic and you're excited about it, you'll want to keep going. So Deb, I could talk to you for hours about the ins and outs and the intricacies of Dungeons and Dragons. But if you don't have any interest, it's going to be torturous to sit there and listen to it. But if you get to play it and you get to a little bit of buy-in and you start getting interested, you'll want to learn more. You'll want to be pulled into the conversation. You'll start asking questions. Well, guess what? That's how children engage in learning. That's how teens and adolescents. That's how young adults. That's how we as adults who've been on the path for a little bit longer continue to learn because it's interesting. We're lifelong learners. We're programmed to find interest in novelty and information. And Deb, I mean, you can respond here too, please. I have yet to meet a preschooler who said, like, you know what? Writing my name and learning to read, boo, not interested. I don't want to learn any of that stuff. I just want to go and ride the tricycle all day.
Yeah. They have their own internal intrinsic motivation. And when
They
they're
want
ready,
to.
right. When they're ready. I mean, I always tell the story of Lee and people have heard it 1,000 times, but she's now 14 almost.
Mm-hmm.
But when she was 2, she wanted me to spell things with sidewalk
Mm-hmm.
chalk
Yep.
on the back patio. Um, Nana, spell mommy. M-O-M-M. Spell
Yeah.
daddy. D-A-D-D. Spell Leah. L-I-A. Spell Nana. N-A-N-A. And we
Yep.
would do that. I mean, the whole patio was covered with sidewalk chalk. And then
Mm-hmm.
she would go, okay, and then she was ready to go do something else. But and then, a week and a half later, she turns around on those little things that you can write on and then swish it and erase it.
Yep.
And she's 2, and
Mm-hmm.
she spells L, and she says in her head L-I-A. And then before I could take a picture of it, she
Yep.
erased it. But I mean, it's intrinsically motivated.
Right.
And
And
that's
right
why we have to listen to what they're interested in
and
so
and
that
to,
we can, help them that way.
and recognizing like to bring in the work of the Reggio schools and Laura Smelguzzi, the 100 languages, she language was one of her languages,
Mhm.
letters, literacy. But there's going to be another child who's going to show you that by building it out of blocks. There's going
Mhm.
to be somebody who's going to go over to the clay table and pinch all the letters into different things, or say, or not even use letters, but make themselves. Well, here's me, and here's Nana, and here's our dog. And then they're going to show you through the clay. There's going to be someone who's going to dance it out and tell the story in the dramatic play area. And again, just like the interconnectedness of those domains, the languages that we use, that we have inside of us, if we, if the teachers can recognize more of those
Mhm,
and the languages that each of the children we work with are presenting,
mhm.
we're only going to support that learning. Because again, similar to, I've never met a preschooler who's not interested in learning. If I know that there's that child who loves dinosaurs, I can't bring enough books. I can't bring enough toys. I can't bring enough video clips. I can't bring enough related material on dinosaurs to say, to get this child to go, you know what, I'm not interested in dinosaurs anymore. They only want more and more and more, because again, it's so exciting to one, to learn new things. But as we know, again, repetition leading to mastery, getting that we want to watch the same story, or the movie, we want to read the same book, we want to play with the same thing, because that only reinforces the learning that we have inside of us. And then you see that's the child who also goes over, hey, did you know that Diplodocus and Ankylosaurus are actually like two eras apart in terms of development, or that T-Rex and Stegosaurus could never have existed at the same time? And I think these are right, but I don't know. But the paleontologist preschooler that I had could definitely tell me which era they were in accurately. But they're sharing that knowledge because they themselves are. And so again, I'm gonna try to reel it back to our initial startup, but like that initial interconnectedness, the excitement they have, the joy they have, their feelings, so their emotional sense, they're sharing it with somebody else to support that social piece. The cognitive piece, of course, is a part of
Think,
what's going on.
think of the vocabulary alone.
Right. The creative piece, when they say, "Hey, let's go over here and let's build the Jurassic area, and here's all the dinosaurs we need. Oh, and you're gonna be the this one, and I'm gonna be this one," and then they get to act it out using their bodies and interacting, and then maybe it's a meat eater and it's a, you know, carnivore herbivore, and now they're wrestling, because guess what? That's what dinosaurs did when they interacted. Well, now we have all those domains happening simultaneously.
In something children are interested in.
Right.
And so I think I think sometimes we feel that we have to be the teacher, right, versus
Mm-hmm.
the observer to determine what it is these children are interested in. So I always try to help people connect with what they like, right?
Right.
So we're at a conference, right? So here we
Mm-hmm.
are at a conference. And I got to go through the program and say, oh, I really want to go to this, and I really want to go to this, and I
Yep.
really want to go to this, and I really want to go to this. These are things that I'm interested in. And so
Mm-hmm.
these are the sessions I'm going to go to. And so I had that autonomy,
Right.
and being an adult, I could make those decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but when the teacher says our theme this week is plants,
Mm-hmm.
and I have no interest in plants, and I would rather be over here playing with dinosaurs.
Right.
And maybe my friend over here is really interested in the firefighters because the fire department came over the
Right.
weekend to their street. And this
Mm-hmm.
child over here is really interested in having a book read to them because they really love this book.
Right.
But the teacher says, well, no, this week we're going to do plants. I
Right.
mean, so I think that's something that we all have to work on, right?
Right.
It's not what you're interested in doing. It's really hearing those languages that children are giving you
Mm-hmm.
and being able and being confident enough in yourself that you can do this. I always tell my students, you do not need to know every answer. In fact,
Mm-mm.
when they're developing study topics that'll go long periods of time
Mm-hmm.
in a curriculum course, they have to, but I
Yep.
have to go out and listen to children,
Yeah.
children interested in, and then come in and they'll say, well, what's the answer to this question? And I said, I don't know. Look, figure it out, right?
Yeah.
I don't have all the answers.
Right.
And so it's I think it's a mindset that early childhood folks need support because we've done it this way for a long time.
Right.
This is maybe what's expected from our
Right.
program or director. And I think sometimes we just have to say, that's really nice, but that's
Mm-hmm.
not what the kids are interested in today.
Right. And it's not to say that you don't bring in other topics. I think your example is great that you have these different interests within the classroom and you've got going on. And I'm using your plant example. We started to grow an amaryllis bulb in my class um, in the winter. Now did we start before winter break or after? I think we started after. So right or after the new year. And amaryllis plants are exciting because once they start growing, they grow pretty fast and it's noticeable change every day. Well, you can bring the provocation, you can bring the exciting thing in,
Hmm.
see who responds, but then
Hmm.
it's not, hey, we all have to sit here for 20
Yeah.
minutes and we're all going to do this thing. But we brought the plant back every day to large group because we wanted to see what changed. I mean, then the
What
kids could
changed?
notice it
Hmm.
got bigger. Well, how much bigger? Well, we should get the ruler out. Oh, well, we use the ruler. Guess what? The plant's growing too big. The ruler isn't big enough. We need the bigger ruler. Okay, we got the bigger ruler. Well, guess what? The bigger ruler wasn't even big enough now. Now we got to get a tape measure.
Hmm.
Well, we can build the excitement and the interest. And we kept following it. And the buds came, then the flowers came. Well, then the flowers were there and they started to wilt, and then the flowers wilted and they started to fall off. But the leaves kept growing. And then I've always kind of cut them down before. So I learned something this year that if you let the stalk keep growing, another pod comes out, and that's the seed pod. But the kids were saying, "Oh, that must be another flower." So we waited and it finally split open and it's a bunch of seeds inside. So like we kept going and we could keep doing it, but we didn't have to sit and do the 10-minute, 15-minute plant activity that everybody has to participate in because that's on our curriculum plan for this month.
Well, and that's a beautiful example of how you integrate, right? So
Right.
it doesn't have to be related to a theme.
Mm-hmm.
It's related to a teacher providing a provocation that children may or may not be interested in, but it's something that they may gain interest in just by watching the process of that plant growing,
Right.
because it happens quicker than some other seeds that we might plant or some other bulbs that we might plant. And so having that not as part of a study topic or a theme, but having it as a provocation, I think is a beautiful way for us to ensure that there's science that's coming in and
Right.
children are able to do lots of math with that and think of the language they did and think of the cognition of them problem solving, saying, oh, look, maybe it's another flower. And then, oh, it's a whole thing of seeds, so we could have more of them. So, I mean, it's truly beautiful when we can break it down, just like you just did.
Right.
We can break it down and show how you integrate. There
Mm-hmm.
was so much stuff in there that if you went to the science standards and the literacy standards and the approaches to learning standards and the fine motor standards, you and the social standards and the emotional standards, you would find more standards than ever that
Mm-hmm.
apply just to that one thing that is an ongoing project, sort of,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hoping people who have been listening are hearing that it's not hard to integrate all of those
Mm-hmm.
different content areas or social emotional development areas into a daily routine. But that's not the hard part. You just have to
No.
stop siloing it by subject.
Right.
But it's also important to recognize the importance of active physical
Mm-hmm.
play and what that does in all those domains, and allowing children
Right.
to get their book on rough and tumble play so that you feel more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about, oh, how can I really observe what this child is interested in, and then ask them good questions, right?
Yeah.
That's something you'd like to learn more about. What are
Right.
your questions about that? What do we already know about that? All of those things that build on what it is that they're interested in doing instead of saying, here's our study topic for the next week. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, and I think I want to also just I'm going to guess that a lot of people listening and that a lot of people in the field, as we kind of said, there you might be doing this already and not have the you might not be aware or be able to label it as it being as interconnected as it is. So I want to give, that hopeful credit and shout out to the people that are
mhm.
probably doing this. And if you just step back and go, wait a minute,
Wait a
if
minute.
I change my mind of that it's not just siloed developmental domain topics and content, that they
Mhm,
are interworking together, great, that's great. But I think the that other like this, as we're talking on, IPA USA's platform of, supporting play, that the play is where all that interconnectedness can really happen. And again, it's
yeah.
not to say that you wouldn't have moments of introduction and instruction and
Mhm,
practice on specific topics or content areas, but then step back. And if that's a majority of your day or your time with the children, and you've got play kind of peppered in as the treat afterwards, well, now
mhm,
you're taking away their working laboratory to put these concepts together because like with that amaryllis plant, we started to get interested in what else is really long, what else is really tall. So, and we'd been making a paper chain in our classroom of adding a link every day. And we kind of had been doing it and looking at, well, look how big that's gotten since school started. Well, look
mhm,
how big this is going. Hey, well, how big have we gotten? And we started to measure ourselves, checking in kind of day to day, month to month. We had, how many Unifix cubes can we lay across the floor?
mhm.
Well, we have more than 100. We have more than 200. Well, we should probably start counting. Is it longer than us? Building hollow block structures that went, over 6 feet in the air and building safe zones to, because again, we're our social domain and emotional place. We want people to feel safe. And if
Mhm.
you get too close to the structure, it could fall down. So we laid big planks around it to make what we called our fall zone. So if you wanted to go over there, you didn't just walk right in. You walked, you looked, see if it was safe, see if they're building it, or ask the builders if you can come in and get a block from the shelf. So we're again the interconnectedness of all of that interaction, but
Amazing.
because we're looking at the excitement, using the excitement of this plant growing fast, well, we're seeing kids drawing it at the table, great, but we're also talking about it with our bodies. We're looking at it with the blocks. We're doing it in with the manipulatives. We're doing true creativity and drawing other things that we see are really tall rather than sitting down and we're gonna all do the cotton ball snowman, but you can be
Right.
creative into where you decide to put the hat on it.
Oh boy.
That's not creative at all. Like the creativity is what else do you think is tall? Well, dinosaurs and trees and buildings and they're drawing along. Well, yeah, that shows me your
Mm.
creative thinking of what you're putting together and then the cognitive piece of comparing and contrasting. Great. So again, that all that interconnectedness and again, I hope many people are already doing this and this conversation gives them the chance to go, wait, how do I do that? I guess how could I look at the standards and pull, skills or assessments from multiple domains in this one
Within.
activity?
Mhm.
Because
And I
I'm,
think that gives you your evidence, right?
hmm
That help when people say, well, why aren't you doing blah, blah, blah? You can say, look at what I'm doing.
yeah,
Look at all of this because
right.
it is so much better for us to do it. And if you're a teacher in a classroom, are you just doing one thing in one domain of development when you're teaching or
hmm
when you're observing children? Oh my goodness, no.
Right, right.
So we have to recognize that interdependence and interrelated and interconnectedness between the domains and what we're doing, we just need to see it because it's happening. And it really happens when children are interested and you're following their lead instead of expecting them to follow yours. So, oh my goodness, what a wonderful Porch Play Chat, Ross. Thank you. So
It was my pleasure.
I'm gonna close this out. To learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. There's some exciting new things happening, so you want to go and look at the website. And until next time, keep on playing.
Thanks, Deb.